So in this session, we're going to talk about Microsoft 365 for Business and its integration potential for SMB style clients. Now, in this presentation, what we're going to basically cover is we're going to go through an overview of the Microsoft 365 product. We're also then going to look at how this product is licensed, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time looking at how we do some deployment options within Microsoft 365 for Business. Now, just a quick overview and refresh here of the importance of Microsoft 365 into today's environment. So today's environment, we see lots of customers with disparate platforms running out of date or old operating systems and older versions of Office. Obviously, a lot of these are still supported, but they do have more vulnerabilities than the more current ones. You'll also see a large mixture of different sorts of software, and again, also a mix of the way the desktops and the devices are managed, if they're managed at all. And we also see a mixture of tools to try and provide security and management about our devices, as well as options to provide productivity. Now, all of those disparate systems mean that it's difficult to manage, it's difficult to secure, and the advantage of the Microsoft 365 product is that we can bring all of those under a single umbrella that effectively is managed using a single Azure AD login. Now, Microsoft 365 includes three major products. The first one of these is Office 365. So the Office 365 that you are familiar with, that includes the desktop apps, things like SharePoint, Skype, Exchange Online, Teams, and also some additional business apps that are available in the Microsoft 365 business plan. We also then include Windows 10 in that mix so that the user can make sure they're up to date. So we include that in the licensing as well. Now, we also include some of the best features of the Enterprise and Mobility Suite. So these are particularly aimed at securing and managing the devices. Now, there is some variation in what is available depending on the plans. So how do we understand what the right version of the product is for our customers? So we start off with the traditional Office 365. So that's going to give customers the ability to collaborate in teams, to move their emails into the cloud. And then we can add the Microsoft 365 for Business. Now, this really works well for the SMB style customer, and again, builds on the productivity that we've got through Office 365. Now, when the needs of the customer exceed what's provided in the business version, we can then look at the enterprise version. So like Office 365, there is a business SKU, and there are also enterprise SKUs of Microsoft 365. So that's going to provide the higher end functionality and again features that you typically see with Office 365, plus some advanced features that are unique to the Microsoft 365 enterprise offering. So how do we actually manage and control the licensing? What's involved here? So again, the matrix here we can see is that we typically start out with the Office 365 Business Premium product. This is the same as it's always been. This is a good entry level for especially SMB customers into the world of the cloud. Now, if they need more advanced features, if they need things like legal hold on their mailboxes or unlimited size on their OneDrive and their mailboxes, and we can start looking at the Enterprise, the E3 and the E5 version of Office 365. So these two products, again, are the same, and it's important to understand the business need and value that these can provide for the customer. Now, the addition here is the Microsoft 365 for Business. So basically what that includes is Office 365 Business Premium Plus, some additional device management features, the ability to deploy Windows 10 PCs and manage those from a single admin experience that you're used to in the Office 365 environment. Now, again, you'll also see there is an enterprise version of Microsoft 365. So this is built on the Office 365 E3 and E5 plans. and again includes advanced options such as improved data management, security, and potentially the cloud PBX functionality. So again, think of Microsoft 365 as Office 365 plus Windows 10 and some EMS, and then the Microsoft 365 Enterprise is the Office 365 E3 or E5 with the full features of Intune plus the full features of Windows 10 Enterprise. So this gives us a significant number of options that we can go and speak to our customers. So again, Office 365 may be a good starting place, but we're finding that more and more customers are wanting to manage their devices as well as their information, and Microsoft 365 does provide the ability to do that quickly and easily. And again, it's a matter of deciding what functionality is required. Basic functionality, you can use the business SKUs. The more advanced style features are rolled into the enterprise options. Now, of course, what you can also do, you can continue to add on additional licenses from other Office 365 products. So, for example, we could add on advanced security management if it's not in there, advanced compliance, threat intelligence. So, for example, if we had a Microsoft 365 business offering, we could also then add on the advanced security management, which would be a single add-on option. So just beware here that the prices mentioned are in US dollars. So again, contact the appropriate disty for that information. Now, again, we can combine all of these, or we can roll these into some of the packages. So you'll see that the Microsoft 365 Enterprise E5 includes a lot of these advanced features. So that's the benefit of using the more advanced plans here. So if we look at a matrix across all the products as well as the different offerings, we can get an idea of what Office 365 provides out of the box. So we've got the Office 365 Business Premium, and then built on top of that is the Microsoft 365 Business. As you can see, includes some additional device management options. And then we step up to the Office 365 E3 and Microsoft 365 E3. So again, they basically build on each other. And you'll see that now we're in the enterprise SKUs. We're getting things like Azure Active Directory. We're getting the Microsoft Desktop Optimization package, and so on. And when we step up to the full enterprise product, you'll see that we get the full features, including the Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection, the full version of EMS. We're getting Azure Active Directory Plan 2, and so on. So again, a good mix there to be able to work with the known quantity of Office 365, and then also add on the value of the Microsoft 365 in the business and in the enterprise plans. So if we want to look at some broad strokes here, we would say that Business Premium and the Microsoft 365 product are aimed at the SMBs. The Business Premium, the pure Office 365 offering, typically is added to customers who have no IT, particularly smaller, 5 to 10, and their compelling reasons to move to this environment is to make sure their Office software is up to date and to make sure their Windows applications and their desktops are also up to date. And these people typically also going to need support for their mobile devices. So a lot of their work day to day will be done on mobile devices. Microsoft 365 will also work well in environments that are larger, typically that have a single server environment. It can be viewed as a potential small business server replacement, prevent users having to again go in and refresh and get a new server, and it works really well in that environment because it can manage the information, give the users the productivity benefits, and move things like email off premises. At the high end, we have the 365 Enterprise. Now, this is going to be very partner-led. You're going to have to create the policies. You're going to have to push them out to devices. You're going to have to manage that. There's a lot more granularity in there. This is where you're going to see mixed operating systems, potentially hybrid environments. Security is very, very important here. And again, one of the big compelling reasons here is to avoid the need potentially to upgrade servers and again control the hardware for refresh and make that a much easier process to roll out for those environments. So again, we'll see that the Office 365 works well with typically the small users. Next up is your Microsoft 365 for those users who want the additional security and also the device management. And at the high end, we have the enterprise, which is again generally very focused on the security side and managing all those devices very tightly. And that environment is the one that best suits the high-end product like Microsoft 365 Enterprise. Now, one of the common questions is how is this actually licensed? So you would purchase the license through CSP and you would apply it to a user just as you would any Office 365 license. So as you can see here, basically you would license the user with a Microsoft 365 business license. Simply turn it on, apply that to the user. Now you can mix and match those licenses as required. So you can mix and match Office 365 and Microsoft 365 licenses, standalone licenses, enterprise licenses, so you don't lose any functionality by moving or incorporating Microsoft 365 into your environment. Now you'll see that the Microsoft 365 Business, for example, does include quite a number of options when you do expand. So you get things like Staff Hub, you get bookings, you get a version of Intune, Forms, Yammer, Teams. So again, it's the full Office 365 Business plus the add-on features that we've talked about. You'll see how you also get a Windows license and some features of Azure Active Directory. So again, it is really as simple as applying licensing as you're familiar with. We do this via the CSP program as we've always done. So again, we can mix and match licenses and go with that flexibility as required. So nothing has changed there. So now that we've covered off the licensing side of it, let's spend a few moments talking about how we set this up as an admin in the back end. So when we fire up the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, you'll see that it looks very familiar and to what you perhaps have already seen with Office 365. Now you'll notice at the top there is a setup wizard. Now this is designed to obviously get you up and started quickly, get all the policies for your devices in there and running quickly and easily. Now you'll also notice there are a number of additional cards in the console. Now one of these is the devices card. Now that's going to be targeted to managing PC and mobile devices, so the actual physical device. You'll also notice that there is a Windows 10 upgrade, so part of the Microsoft 365 license allows users to upgrade from Windows 7, 8, 8.1 professional machines to Windows 10 Pro. Creators update in the case of Microsoft 365 Business and to the Windows 10 Enterprise for the Microsoft 365 Enterprise. So again, we're focusing on the Microsoft 365 Business version here. So the upgrade would be to Windows 10 Pro. So you'll see that we also get a number of ways of installing that, and that's all covered in the device card that we see there. Now, if we follow the wizard along, basically these are the steps that will take you through. Again, it's going to ask you whether you have a custom domain. You can put that in, verify that. Once that is complete, you're then able to add new users. All right, so this will add a new user, first name, last name, and then we'll also quickly license them. Now, you don't have to do this, but again, that is part of the wizard just to make it easy to get up and started. Now, again, you can then go in and simply license existing users. All right, so you can simply click on a existing user and add a Microsoft 365 Business license to them quickly and easily using the wizard. Now, if you want to, if you haven't done any email migration, that is also available, or you can do that at a later time. So this gives you that option to roll it all in and do it all at once using the wizard. Now, once you've gone through that, this is probably one of the first new items we've got here. So we want to go in here and use the wizard to protect our work files and our mobile devices. So this is focused on creating a policy for things like Windows 10 devices for iOS and Android. Now that's going to typically want to encrypt the devices to make sure the information on there is protected. It also is going to prevent the user from copying and pasting information from corporate applications into personal applications. Okay, so here we're focused on the files for the mobile devices, the security for that, requiring a PIN number to access applications, and potentially making those devices secure by wiping them after failures or inactivity. Now you'll see that the way to configure that is a quite simple option here of simply sliding a bar on or off and maybe setting a few other timed options here. So all you need to do is go through and select any of those options, whether they're on or off, and then when you've made that selection, you can then go to the next item. It will be saved as a new policy. So then we step into the settings for the Windows 10 devices specifically. So we're going to basically look at protecting the files using Windows Defender. We're going to protect the Microsoft Edge browser, and we're going to be able to set the idle time on screensaver, use Cortana, and again determine the update frequency for our Windows 10 devices. All right. Now down the bottom you'll see you've also got the option there to install Office on your Windows 10 devices. So this means that you can then set up policies so that when a user is assigned a license, Office will be pushed automatically to their Windows 10 device. And we'll cover that a little bit later on in the presentation. Okay, so again, the options here are a simple selection via yes/no option slider, and again some minor options to select time intervals. Now again, once you've done that, you then select next, and that will save a new policy for you. Alright, so then the idea here is you've now reached the end of the setup and things are ready to go. So now you've set up your policies and users can now log into the system already, and those policies that you have set will then be maintained and then deployed to new users that you add to the system. So what's it going to look like for someone who wants to use an iOS when they join that device to the Microsoft 365 business environment that you've just set up? So again, typically the user can download the Office 365 apps, Outlook and SharePoint and those sort of things from the store. And then what will happen is when they go in and add their corporate account, so their Office 365 Azure AD account, okay, they're going to basically be prompted to go through a bit of a sign-up process here. So again, it's going to, in the case of Outlook on iOS, it's going to ask us to get started. Again, we need to determine whether we want to get notified, and enters the corporate email address that you've set up in Microsoft 365. You add the account, okay, and the message they'll receive is that the organization is now controlling that device, all right, that app on that device. So an indication to the user that the information there is now basically controlled via the settings in the Microsoft 365 Business Portal. So the user will push OK there to continue. And basically then if you set the PIN requirement, they'll then need to put in a PIN, and that will be their easy way to access the device. Now that then will set up the configuration, will apply the policies to that device and make sure that it is secure. So let's again look at the initial setup here for an Android device. So users going to download the applications from the Google Play Store again, so the Outlook, SharePoint and so on. And when they launch those apps, in this case it's going to be Outlook, they'll be prompted to sign in using their company credentials. Now when that happens here, they're going to be asked to install the Intune app. So they need to go to the store, they need to download that and install that. And then basically this will enroll them in the environment, in the device management for that environment, and they'll just need to reopen Outlook. And again, this will be stepped through. If you have the PIN option set for your applications, the user will need to put in a PIN and then reopen Outlook so that they can then get access. Now, once they've gone through that, they'll then be able to access their mailbox and go through a quick tutorial. Now, one of the other big differences here with setting up devices is also going to be Autopilot. So we've talked about the way to set up the policies for something like an iOS and an Android device. We're now going to look at how we can roll out Windows 10 control and management onto new devices. Now, the way we do this is with Autopilot. So the idea here is a user buys a new Windows 10 machine, out of the box experience. Now, prior to going in and allowing the user to log in and power that device up, we need to go to the Microsoft Business Store. Now, you log into that using the admin credentials you use for your Microsoft 365 environment. So you'll then get access to the Microsoft Store for Business for that tenant. You'll see that you have an option there to manage, so select that. That will then take you to a list of the organization and applications as you see, but you'll see that one of the options on the left hand side is the devices, so we need to select that. Now, when we select that, we are taken to the Autopilot area. Now, at the moment, you'll see there are no devices in there, so what we need to do is we need to select the option to add a device. Now, when we add a device, we'll be prompted to create a default deployment group, and then we'll also be prompted to upload a device file. Now, a device file is really a CSV file that contains things like the machine serial number and a GUID, so that machine can be identified easily when it connects to the internet. Now, what the process will be going forward is that if you have a new machine from a distributor or a vendor, they will provide you with that CSV file, and you simply upload that into the business store here, as you see. But going forward, what is going to happen is that the providers, the device manufacturers, will actually automatically upload or make those configuration files, the device files, available for you automatically online. So they'll put them into the store or make it easy for them to be uploaded directly into the business store here. But for the time being, you may have to do that manually. Like I said, it's just a matter of uploading a CSV of that machine. That should be provided by the device manufacturer. There are some PowerShell scripts that you can run. So if you do have your own machines, maybe white label, or you want to re-provision some machines so they take advantage of Autopilot, there is a very simple PowerShell script that you can run that will extract that information out before you sysprep it and give it to a user. So again, just a simple CSV file. So we upload that, and that is successfully detected and put into our portal. Now then, what we need to do is we need to create an auto deployment profile. So we simply go in and select the option to create a new profile. Now you'll see at the moment that we have to give the profile, the policy deployment profile, a name, and we can then set a number of options here. Okay, so we can set the option to skip the privacy settings and disable the local admin account if we want, and also the EULA. But you'll notice that that it's automatically going to skip the Cortana on OneDrive and OEM for us as well. So once we've made those options, we simply go in and create that profile. All right, and when we've created that profile, we then apply that to the machines that we want. Now you'll notice that you can have obviously multiple machines in this environment, and you can also have multiple policies. Okay, so you can mix and match this as required, and over time the number of options that are available to you will continue to increase. So there's going to be more options in there as this service grows, but for the time being, go in there, upload the machine file, create your policy, and then deploy that policy against the machines that are up there. Now, once you've done that, what you've set in place is the fact that when a new user takes a clean Windows 10 machine out of the box, for example, and they're taken through a number of steps, connect to the internet, it will go and get that policy and apply that to the machine and reduce the amount of questions. So that sort of experience looks like this. So they power up the machine. They're then basically asked for some very simple questions about their language and the layout, and then they're basically also asked to connect to the internet. So once they've connected to the internet, gone through those basic steps there, they're then prompted for their email address. Now that email address will be their logon to Microsoft 365. This is their Azure AD account. So once they log in with that, it will then recognize that, ask for their password, and then we'll get to the Windows 10 desktop. So it's really that simple. So from a user's point of view, all they will need to do basically is to go in there and power on the machine, connect to the internet, and then log into it with their Azure AD or their Microsoft 365 credentials. The machine will then be recognized thanks to the file that was uploaded to the business portal, and then it will automatically add it to the Azure AD of the tenant. It will then apply any policies that have been set in the background, and then potentially it will go in and start deploying Office. So again, we can not only deploy things like our iOS management, we can also do that on Android, and we can push out and manage the initial configuration of Windows 10 environment thanks to Autopilot. But Microsoft 365 is also going to give us the ability to do the deployment of Office on the desktop as well remotely. So when you go into Microsoft 365, you will see that there is an additional tile here, this device actions tile. All right, and you'll see that you have the ability here to remove company data. So that's going to go in and remove any corporate files that are on the devices that are under management. We can do a factory reset, so we can again make sure that that machine's nice and clean, no corporate data or apps on there, and the information that was on there is removed so that that can then be re-provisioned to another user or potentially disposed of. Now, the final option you've got here is to manage the Office deployment. Now, when we select that, you'll see that we have the option here to go in and select the option to install Office as soon as possible or to uninstall Office. Now, in most cases, you're going to want to select the option to install Office as soon as possible, and you'll see that you also have the option here to add this policy to a group of users. So the good thing here is you don't have to apply it to all users, or won't necessarily apply to all users. You can create security groups in your Office 365 environment that this policy will apply to. So maybe you have remote workers, you put them all into a group. You can add the group to this deployment policy and then select to install Office as soon as possible for that group. But you can also select everybody if you wish. So once you've got that, you again go in and create that policy and save that. Now, once that has applied, what will happen is that any machine that is connected to the environment and logging in via their Azure AD credentials, once the policy has been deployed, you will then find in the background, if we're looking at Task Manager here, that you see that the click to run will now auto launch, run in the background, and it will do a click to run install of Office for that environment. Okay, so that gives you that ability again to roll out Office. So we've set that policy in our management console. When a Windows 10 device that is connected to Azure AD and logged in with an Azure AD user, in the background that policy will kick off. It will launch the click to run and start installing our Office on the desktop. Now, when that has completed and the user tries to run Office for the very first time, they will see a screen that looks like this. Now, this is just getting their acceptance of the user license agreement. So all they need to do is accept and then start using any of the Office applications. When they do, you'll see that the application will boot as normal, and the good thing is that they will automatically be logged in to that Office environment with their Microsoft 365 credentials, because again they're logging into the machine with their Azure AD credentials to start with. So it's going to make it nice and easy. No additional login prompts once they've got in and started. The Windows 10 machine will be logging in with Azure AD. That will then pass credentials into the Office application and dramatically reduce the amount of prompts that a user may receive to gain access to their environment. So if we have a look now at a example here of a live running console here, so you'll see that I've logged into the area using my standard Office 365 login. You'll see that I have my users here. So if I go into any of these users, and let's go into Alex, and you'll see that all of that is standard as before. When it comes up, you'll see that the product licenses assigned here is the Microsoft 365 Business. All right, as I showed you, and then if we expand that, you'll see that I have all those options that I can turn off and turn on underneath there. Now, if we scroll down a bit here, you'll see that I also now have an additional option here. So I have the device settings for that user. So in this case, it's using a desktop, and I can go in there and potentially manage that if I want. But again, we can easily add users if required. Now, if I go in and look at the billing, we have a look at the subscriptions. You'll notice that the Microsoft 365 is just a subscription, like any other Office 365 subscription, right? So you just add it in there as available. Look at the licenses. So again, all this should be very familiar, all right? So again, we go back to the home. You'll see that we have the ability here. If we go through, you'll see that we have an additional tile here called device policies. So if I go into the device policies, you'll see that the policies that have already been set up, in this case, the application management for Windows 10. So if I click in there, you'll see that the group that it applies to, in this case, is all users, and then I'll be able to go in and edit the policy name. But here I can go in and change potentially the copying of company data, so I can restrict that. I can determine Office documents, access control, protected data, and so on. You'll see that these are the apps that are protected, typically Microsoft apps that are accessing Office 365 environment. So that. Now, if I want to, for example, go in here and add an additional policy, all right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in here and add an application management policy for, in this case, I'll make it iOS, and you'll see that I can pull this down here and select from a number of policy types. I'm going to take the iOS one in this case. All right, now you'll see that I can choose here to protect files, right? So that's on. I can force users to save their files into OneDrive for Business, so I can save them locally. And if I go down here, you'll see that I can control how a user works with their apps on that environment. So if I turn those on, all right, you'll notice that for the iOS devices, I've also got the ability here to deny access to work files on jailbroken or rooted devices. I can also determine which applications I'm working for or controlling on the iOS device. Again, all nice and easy simply by making my selection. So when I finish, I simply go add, and that policy will be included in my environment. Now, if you run through the initial wizard setup, these policies will generally be created for you, but like I said, you can go in here and you can go in and create additional policies, apply them to different groups, and again give you that flexibility. But you'll get a number of these created by default when you run through the setup wizard with your Microsoft 365. So that's an additional tile here, the device policies. Under here, you'll see that we have the device actions one here. All right, you'll notice that these devices here, again, I've got the option because these are already deployed by Autopilot. I can factory reset or I can remove company data. So that's going to ensure that any company data on that device is removed for me, and I get a nice indication of the OS version as well. Okay, so it's simple to work on those device actions. So we'll see in here that we have, as mentioned, the ability to remove the company data, do a factory reset, and there's our option there to deploy the Office on the desktop. Now, the last additional tile that we've got here is our Windows 10 upgrade. Okay, so you can see that we can install the upgrade, or we can share a link, so we can give a link to a user to download that. We can create the installation media, so we can put it on a USB stick and provide that. So remember that the Microsoft 365 license is going to allow a user to upgrade their version of Windows 7, 8 or 8.1 Pro to a Windows 10 machine. So it will include that on top of all the benefits that they're getting in Office 365 plus the management backend that you'll get in looking after these devices. But apart from that, in the Microsoft 365 environment, this is again very similar and should be very familiar to you from the Office 365 look and feel. Now, if you've never seen the EMS, the Enterprise Mobility Suite, or Intune, so that is now managed directly through the Azure console. Now, the important thing to remember here with Microsoft 365 Business, this is a view-only area. So the Enterprise, you get the full features and functionality, but in the Business, we can just go in and view the policies that are set in the admin console. So I've logged in here to the Azure portal using the same admin credentials for my tenant. I've gone to Microsoft Intune, and then what I'm going to do is go in here and look at the mobile apps. Now, if I go into mobile apps, I then select app protection policies, and we go in there and we should see a familiar policy that we set up in the admin console. Okay, so you'll see in here, if we expand this a bit, you'll see that I have my application management for iOS and for Windows. So let's go in and look at the one for iOS, and let's go in here and look at the policy settings. All right, so you can see that you go in here and you'll see that because I set that option here to save as, it's selected to save those options to OneDrive for Business. So this is effectively the back end. These are the subset of features that you do get as part of Microsoft 365 for Business, but remember that there is not the ability here to make any changes or update. They don't flow backwards. They flow from the admin center into Intune when it comes to Microsoft 365 for Business. However, with the Microsoft 365 Enterprise, you get the full version of Intune, so you can manage it directly in there and get far more granular control. But again, for those of you who have not yet seen the Intune portal, again, this is all now done in the Azure backend, and you'll see that we do get a lot of control here from devices to mobile apps to conditional access to all of these. Now, most of these features are controlled and depend on the licenses that we have. If we have the Enterprise, we have full access to these options here. If we have the Microsoft 365 Business license, then we do have a restricted set, and we really can't make any changes. All changes have to be made in the console, and they have to be made typically in the device policies area here. So that's where you'll be managing it for Microsoft 365 Business. All right, so let's have a bit of a wrap up here and just cover off what we've looked at today. So the idea with Microsoft 365 is that it's going to give you the best of Office 365. It's going to build on what's already there, the value of the Business Premium, the E3 and the E5. It's going to add additional features. It's going to add additional security. It's going to add the ability to manage and maintain your devices. So one of the big issues, one of the big needs is to manage these devices, because all users are using these with corporate information. Those devices are outside the environment. They're not typically connected to a domain controller, so that makes it hard to manage, and that's where the Microsoft 365 policies can come in and control and allow you to manage those devices quickly and easily, all with the included license that gives you those additional features. You've seen how that you can also seamlessly deploy Windows 10 using Autopilot. The machine boots out of the box. It will then be configured as per your policy, and then you also have the ability to deploy Office on the desktop to those devices as well, thanks to the click to run abilities and the options in the Microsoft 365 console. So this is going to make it much easier to roll out devices no matter where they are and whenever the user wants to be able to do that. It's going to give them a better out-of-the-box experience, and again, very much targeted at those users who probably don't connect on a regular basis to the local environment, so they're out roaming around. Now, obviously what I've shown you here is a limited subset of what the product can do, especially when it comes to the enterprise product, but even so, the Microsoft 365 business product, there's a lot more features and functionality in there, but hopefully you've got some idea of how easy it is to manage that, some idea of what the user experience is. The big takeaway now is it's building on Office 365, the Teams, the SharePoint, the Exchange Online, all that sort of stuff, and it's now adding device management. You're controlling those devices with policies. You're being able to deploy devices, control corporate information easily, and again, in the Microsoft 365 business arena, that's all done in the same console in a very, very easy to use interface. So makes life nice and easy. If you need that additional functionality, it's easy then to upgrade to the Office 365 Enterprise offerings. Remember that you can mix and match licenses, so you can have some users with some users with Office 365, some users with standalone. So there's not a lot of limitations there. That just is pushed in via the normal CSP style. So again, very similar to what you're familiar with, but again, add that additional functionality. Now, on top of all that, remember that the SKU also gives you the ability to upgrade Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 Pro machines to Windows 10 to get those machines current, make sure they're up to date. That's going to give them the best of all features. It's going to allow them to join to Azure AD directly. That ability will also give you the flexibility potentially to eliminate an on-prem domain controller. So in that environment where Windows 10 machines can join directly to Azure AD, it's then a question of whether the local domain controller is really required. Going forward, there's probably less and less requirement. Now, in an enterprise, that may not be the case initially, but certainly in the longer term, yes, the domain controller will certainly have reduced influence, will have reduced need. More of it's moving to Azure AD for the simple reason that Azure AD can be deployed, managed, and utilized across the internet, so it's not a requirement for it to be bound to an on-premises domain controller. So moving forward, consider that. Think about the role of the domain controller. We're seeing that it can be eliminated with direct connection to Azure AD, which is, again, very much a part of the Microsoft 365 for business. So hopefully you've got lots of information out there. Go and have a look at the product. There are trials available that you can go and test this stuff out for yourself, and again, that's going to give you a better idea of how to deploy it. I think the most exciting thing certainly is the Autopilot, the ability to deploy the Windows 10 environment for users. And again, remember, this is still early days for this product. It's going to improve. It's going to add additional features as we go forward, and it's already built on top of the Office 365 opportunity. So there's more opportunity to go and talk to customers, to go and show them these products, to show them how it can improve the security and compliance of their environment, manage their devices. And again, it's an additional opportunity for resellers to go in and sell additional services and manage those devices and information on an ongoing system, an ongoing basis, as well as implement things like Microsoft Teams and all the goodness that comes with the Office 365 environment. So certainly strongly encourage for you to do some research, have a look at this product, deploy it for yourself, and then start going out and talking to customers about the opportunities and the value that this can provide their environment.